If you observe carefully, most of your suffering is not happening in reality. It is happening in thought, and this is uncomfortable to admit, because if suffering is caused by the world, you are a victim. But if suffering is caused by how the mind is being used, then something changes. So let us begin very simply. Have you noticed that the mind never stops? Even when nothing is happening, something is happening inside. Commentary, judgment, replay, prediction, conversation with someone who isn't even there. You wake up, it starts. You brush your teeth, it continues. You sit alone, it becomes louder. And slowly, without realizing, you start believing that this stream is you, not something happening within you, but you. This is the fundamental confusion. The mind is a tool. But because it is constantly active, you begin to identify with its movement. Let us look at it carefully. If you hold a hammer in your hand and keep swinging it all day, eventually your arm will hurt. That does not mean the hammer is evil. It means you are using it continuously. The mind is similar. It is an extraordinary instrument. It can imagine cities before they are built. It can solve complex equations. It can create music. It can analyze patterns. It is powerful. But power without awareness becomes noise. Here is the key question for today. If the mind is constantly speaking, who is listening? Pause with this. Thought is happening, but there is something that notices the thought. You can say, I am anxious, but you also know that anxiety is happening. You can say, my mind is racing, which means you are aware that it is racing. That awareness is not the racing. If you were the mind, you could not observe it. Just like if you were the cloud, you could not watch the cloud move. The fact that you can observe a thought means the thought is an object. And if it is an object, it cannot be you. This sounds simple, almost obvious, but psychologically, this is revolutionary, because most people do not suffer from life. They suffer from identification. A memory arises, the body tightens, a story builds, and suddenly you are trapped inside a mental movie. Nothing is happening externally, but internally, everything is dramatic. Now, see this gently. When you were 5 years old, you had thoughts. When you were 15, you had thoughts. Now you have thoughts. The content has changed, but the fact of thought remains. So if thoughts keep changing and you remain, how can you be the thoughts? Something is constant. Something is witnessing change. That witnessing presence is stable. The mind is movement. You are the space in which movement happens. But because movement is loud and space is silent, you begin to believe you are the loudness. Let's explore it psychologically. Imagine someone criticizes you. Immediately, the mind produces reactions. They don't understand me. I always get treated like this. I should have said something. Within seconds, a narrative forms. The body reacts, heart rate shifts, muscles tighten. If you are not aware, you become the narrative. But if there is even a small gap, something different happens. You notice there is anger, there is defense, there is hurt. Notice the language shift. Instead of I am angry, there is anger. Instead of I am broken, there is pain. That subtle shift separates identity from experience. This is not denial. It is clarity. Pain can still be there. Emotion can still move, but it is not your identity. Now understand something important. The goal is not to stop the mind. Trying to stop the mind is like trying to stop your heart. It is not designed to be stopped. The mind's function is to think. The problem is not that it thinks. The problem is that it thinks compulsively and you believe every word. The mind is a brilliant servant, but a terrible master. When you do not know you are separate from it, it begins to dominate. It tells you who you are. It tells you what others think. It predicts disasters. It replays old wounds. And because you are identified, you obey. Have you noticed how quickly a single thought can change your mood? You could be peaceful. Then one memory appears. And suddenly, the whole body shifts. Nothing external changed. Only a thought. This shows you how powerful this tool is. But tools require handling. If you hand a powerful machine to someone unconscious, damage happens. So the real question is not, how do I control my mind? The real question is, do I know that it is a tool? Control comes later. Clarity comes first. Right now, if you sit quietly for a moment and close your eyes, thoughts will continue. Do not fight them. Just observe. A thought comes. It stays briefly. It disappears. Another comes. It stays. It disappears, like clouds in the sky. Now imagine identifying with every cloud. When a dark cloud comes, you say, I am dark. When a bright cloud comes, you say, I am bright. This is exhausting. Instead, what if you remain as the sky? Clouds can come and go. The sky remains untouched. This metaphor is ancient, but psychologically precise. Awareness is sky-like. Mind is cloud-like. The sky does not chase clouds. It does not resist them. It does not cling to them. It allows. That allowing is freedom. Most suffering is resistance to mental weather. You don't want this thought. You want another thought. You argue internally. But who is arguing with whom? It is one part of the mind fighting another part. You are not in that fight unless you enter it. Notice this very honestly. Have you ever been caught in overthinking late at night? Lying in bed, body tired, mind active. It moves from past to future to imaginary scenarios. You try to stop it. It becomes louder. But occasionally, something shifts. You notice, oh, the mind is spinning. And in that noticing, there is slight distance. The spin continues. But you are not fully trapped. That distance is the beginning of freedom. You do not need to destroy the mind. You need to disidentify from it. When you stop identifying, something surprising happens. The mind becomes sharper, because now it is used intentionally. When needed, you think. When not needed, it rests. This is intelligence. Right now, for most people, thinking is not intentional. It is habitual. The mind runs because it has momentum. Like a fan that continues spinning after the switch is turned off. You have been feeding it constantly. Information, stimulation, fear, comparison. And then you say, why won't it stop? It was never trained to stop. But again, stopping is not the goal. Seeing clearly is. If you truly see that the mind is a tool, not you, a natural space opens. In that space, you can choose. You can choose which thought to engage with. You can choose to let certain thoughts pass. You can choose to return attention to the body, to breath, to sound. This choice is power. Without this clarity, you are dragged by mental currents. With clarity, you navigate. This is inner engineering. Not suppression, not positive thinking, not forced calmness, simply understanding the mechanism. Right now, as you listen to these words, thoughts are still happening. Maybe agreement, maybe doubt, maybe comparison. Notice them. The noticing is silent. The thought is verbal. Which one feels more stable? Which one feels more like home? Stay with that question. We will go deeper in the next part. For now, just recognize this. The mind is an extraordinary instrument, but you are the one who holds it. And until you see that clearly, you will continue being used by what was meant to serve you. Pause here. Feel the body. Notice the breath. Thought may continue. Let it. You are not the movement. You are the space in which movement happens. And that space is already free. In the first part, we explored a simple but unsettling idea that the mind is not you. Now we go deeper because understanding something intellectually is easy. Living it is different. Most people say, yes, I know I am not my thoughts, But the moment a painful thought appears, identification returns instantly. Why? Because identity is emotional, not intellectual. The mind does not only produce thoughts, it produces identity. It constantly builds a sense of me, my opinion, my history, my trauma, my success, my insecurity. Notice how tightly the mind holds ownership, and slowly, over years, you construct a psychological structure, a self-image. This self-image is made of memory and imagination. Memory of what happened. Imagination of what could happen. And between these two, the mind creates continuity. It tells a story. This is who I am. But look carefully. When you were a child, your identity was different. Different likes, different fears, different beliefs. Then adolescence came, another identity. Then adulthood, another identity. If identity keeps changing, what is constant? Something is aware of all versions. You remember being 5. You remember being 15. You remember being 25. The body changed. The personality evolved. The beliefs shifted. But the sense of being remained. That sense of being is prior to thought. Before you say, I am this or that, there is simply, I am. Not, I am successful. Not, I am broken. Just, I am. The mind adds labels, and the labels create boundaries. Now see how this creates suffering. Imagine someone questions your belief. If the belief is just a tool, you can examine it calmly. But if the belief is tied to identity, you feel attacked. Why? Because when belief and identity merge, the mind defends itself as if survival is at stake. This is why arguments become emotional. It is not about facts. It is about identity protection. The mind's primary job is survival. In early human history, this was necessary. It scanned for threats. It remembered danger. It predicted risk. This was intelligence. But today, the same mechanism runs psychologically. Instead of scanning for physical danger, it scans for ego threat. What if I look foolish? What if they reject me? What if I fail? These are not life-threatening events, but the body reacts as if they are. Heart rate increases, breath shortens, cortisol rises, all because of thought. The mind imagines a scenario, the body believes it. This is why understanding the mind as a tool is crucial. If you do not see that imagination is imagination, you live in constant internal emergency. Now pause. Have you noticed how often you rehearse conversations that never happen? You imagine explaining yourself, winning an argument, defending your choice. In those rehearsals, emotion becomes real. But the situation is fictional. The mind cannot always distinguish between imagined and actual. It reacts to both. That is power, and that is danger. So the question is not, how do I stop imagination? Imagination is creativity. The question is, do I know when I am imagining? Awareness is the differentiator. Without awareness, imagination becomes anxiety. With awareness, imagination becomes design. This is the shift. The mind is a projection machine. It projects future. It projects meaning. It projects intention onto others. Someone does not reply to your message. The mind projects. They are ignoring me. Immediately, emotion follows. But that projection may be false. The tool created a narrative. You believed it. Now understand something subtle. The mind wants certainty. Uncertainty feels unsafe. So when information is incomplete, it fills the gap, and often it fills it negatively, because survival bias favors caution. Better to assume threat than miss it, from an evolutionary perspective. But psychologically, this creates distortion. You begin reacting not to reality, but to interpretation. And interpretation is mental. When you see this clearly, something softens. You realize you have been living inside commentary. Reality is simple. Thought about reality is complex. Right now, in this moment, what is actually happening? You are listening, breathing, maybe sitting. That is all. But the mind may be saying, is this useful? I already know this. This reminds me of something. What will come next? Commentary continues. Reality is minimal. Commentary is layered. The tool keeps working. Now imagine putting down the tool occasionally, not destroying it, not rejecting it, just placing it aside. Close your eyes for a moment. Notice a thought. Instead of following it, ask silently, to whom does this thought appear? Don't answer intellectually, just observe. The thought appears in awareness, then it fades. Another appears, and fades. You are not producing them deliberately. They arise. This is important. If you were fully in control of thought, you would only think pleasant thoughts, but you cannot prevent certain thoughts from appearing, which means they are not fully you. They are patterns, conditioning, memory, input from years of experience. The mind is a storage device and a processor. It stores impressions. It processes them rapidly, but the witness of this processing is separate. When you sit quietly and observe the mind without interfering, you begin to see its mechanics: repetition, association, prediction, fear loops, and slowly, detachment grows. Not indifference, detachment. Indifference is emotional shutdown. Detachment is clarity. You still feel, you still think, but you are not entangled. This changes relationships. If someone speaks harshly, you notice the reaction arising. Instead of instantly responding from it, there is space. In that space, choice appears. Without separation from mind, reaction is automatic. With separation, response is conscious. Now see how identity also limits potential. If you believe, I am not confident, the mind searches for proof. If you believe, I always mess up, the mind collects evidence. The tool serves the identity. It filters reality accordingly. This is confirmation bias. But when identity loosens, possibility expands. Instead of saying, I am this, you see traits as tendencies. And tendencies can change. The mind becomes flexible. Rigidity comes from identification. Flexibility comes from awareness. So again, the mind is not the enemy. It is an incredible instrument. But like any instrument, it needs the right relationship. You do not hate a knife because it can cut. You respect it. You use it carefully. You store it safely. You do not wave it blindly. The mind is sharper than any blade. Used consciously, it builds civilization. Used unconsciously, it creates inner chaos. Right now, most people are not suffering from external conditions as much as internal mismanagement. They believe every thought. They argue with themselves. They replay past wounds repeatedly. They anticipate future disasters endlessly. And then they say, life is stressful. But stress is largely mental projection. This does not deny real challenges. It simply clarifies that much of psychological strain comes from identification. When you see the mind as a tool, even difficult situations become manageable. Pain may be present, but panic reduces. Uncertainty may exist, but catastrophic thinking decreases because you are no longer fused with thought. This is maturity of consciousness, not suppressing thought, not replacing thought with positive affirmations, simply recognizing this is a thought. And if it is a thought, it is temporary. You are the one in which it appears. Sit with that gently. We will go further in the next part. For now, just notice this throughout your day. When a strong emotion arises, ask quietly, is this me, or is this a mental movement? Do not force an answer. Just observe. That observation alone begins the engineering, and slowly the tool returns to its proper place in your hands.